Imagine having the freedom to work from anywhere in the world, to travel and to explore many new places and still be able to make a living. The life of a digital nomad is a dream for many, but it can also be a reality. Today, I'm going to try to put together the ultimate digital nomading guide to help you on every stage of that journey, from that first stage of figuring out that you're earning enough to go, to navigating your way around a foreign country, to actually pulling the trigger and going to the place you want and meeting so many great people and having so many great experiences. My name's Connor, and on this channel, we focus on how to build your side hustle and business no matter how old you are, and use these skills to be able to work from anywhere in the world, and that includes digital nomading. So if that intrigues you, if you want to hear more about digital nomading or how to build your business, make sure to go hit that subscribe button. We got a lot more videos planned to help you guys out on your journeys. Without further ado, let's get into the ultimate guide to digital nomading. Before we start off, I'd like to start off with a definition of what digital nomading is. Digital nomading is the idea that you can work from anywhere in the world because your connection to income is not tethered by a location. For many years, you had to work where your employer worked. If you were in a factory, you had to report to the factory. Even if you were in a managerial position, all of workers were expected to go into the same office, and even the supervisors and CEO, to an extent, were all expected to be together. But thanks to many advents in modern technology, especially the internet, we can now be connected from anywhere in the world and get that same work done. And you saw, especially during COVID, how many workers went remote. Many people got out of the cities to work from a different location than where their business was headquartered. And now a large collection of people, even pre-COVID, take this idea to the next level and choose to live from another country or anywhere in the world because they are not tethered to one location via their income stream. And when I say income stream, I can mean one of many things. You could have a remote job where your employer doesn't care where you're reporting from as long as you're reporting in and getting your work done. You've seen so many of these jobs come up, especially post-COVID, as many employers opt to stay completely remote and just zoom into work, zoom into the office. You saw this idea promoted in Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week, where you just make yourself so valuable and slowly reduce your dependency to come into the office. His idea was to experiment, start with one day and eventually shift that to so many where you can be traveling while you're working. And if you want to know more about The 4-Hour Work Week, you can of course see in the description a link to that book. Apart from having a remote job, you could be a freelance worker. So many sites like Fiverr, freelancer.com, Upwork have allowed so many people with skills to become a freelancer, become their own boss, and even people opening their own agencies to work from anywhere in the world. If you're taking on client work, there's no one looking over you who's going to care where you are. You could be doing this work from any country. If you're trying to save money, you can go to a cheaper country. Or if you just want to experience the world and get great experiences, many freelancers are opting to live in different areas of the world to get these unique experiences because they are not tethered to one location. It's one of the great benefits of being able to work for yourself. And then finally, third, you can be running your own business. Once again, just like a freelancer, you're your own boss. You have your own income stream, and you can do this anywhere in the world. If you want a digital nomad and you aren't in one of those occupations yet, do not worry. In today's world, it's a great possibility that you can get there. And throughout this video and throughout this channel, I'll be sharing many tips on how you can do that and how you can achieve that independence, that freedom to travel and have this be your life. And then after this stage of being in one of these positions, when you run your own business, whether you're a freelancer or whether you have a remote job, the next thing that comes up is, when do I know that I have enough money to actually pull the trigger and do this? And at a very basic level, it is just income over expenses. If you plan ahead enough to know your expenses and you know your income, you can plan for digital nomading. And so one of the big things I recommend, and in fact, I recommend this in all areas of your life, regardless of whether you're digital nomading or not, is to keep a spreadsheet down with your expenses. And the categories that I would make out here would be for food, for stay, for other, because other expenses like clothing and things that you need will come up, entertainment, and then travel. These are the big primary expenses that you will have when you are digital nomading. Now, each of these we can dive into a little bit more. For food, are you going to want to explore the local cuisines? Are you going to be trying to live on as cheap a budget as possible? Now, the expenses in a lot of these are going to really vary depending on what your goals are as a digital nomad and what country or place you're going to, or if you're even planning on going to one place or traveling around and going to many. But on a base level, when you go to food, are you going to be more valuing saving money and living frugally, or do you want to experience the most of what the cultures you have to offer? Or do you want a balance of these things? So it's important to come up with a budget and also do a little bit of research to figure out how much food costs in the place you're going to. If you're coming from the US, which a large portion of my audience is, it's very possible to go go to places to digital nomad where the cost of living and food is cheaper than the US, but you can also go to ones where it's more expensive. So this is something to keep in mind before you're going. What place are you going to? Have you picked your place yet? Would you like to pick a place that's more affordable, or is that not a factor for the situation that you're in? These are things to look at, and there's so many resources online to figure out what the cost of living is in places and just for digital nomading in general. When I was in Costa Rica this past summer, we had options to eat at local sodas for very cheap, oftentimes cheaper than we can cook food ourselves. And some of the meals we had there were great and immersive and experiences. And so just hearing from other people's experiences from the exact place that you're going, this is a very general guide, so I can't provide you exact feedback on the exact place you're going, but there should be plenty of videos out there for wherever you want a digital nomad about how much the food costs, what's the best way to do it in the place you're going, and according to what budget you have set for yourself. Stay. When we're talking about stay, that's when two options come up. Are you looking to be rooted in one place, which potentially could have cheaper costs with a long-term lease, or are you looking to move around a little bit? When I first got to Costa Rica this summer, I'd planned to stay with a long-term lease for a month in one location there. But when we got there, we discovered we cared more about traveling around and seeing the country than saving a little bit of money at one spot. We opted instead to get out of our lease and to hostel hop for our time at Costa Rica, which definitely is a little bit more distracting, but gave us an experience that we otherwise would not have been able to get. We also got the experience to stay at work hostels where we got to meet other people traveling. We found that by living on your own, you have to be more proactive about meeting other people, and that by living in a hostel with other people and constantly moving, you're meeting other travelers and just finding an amazing community of other digital nomads and travelers and just building such a great network of people around you. Other. It's important to have an other for those expenses that will come up beyond food. Would you need to buy a bottle of Tylenol? Did you destroy your shoes? There's so many things that aren't in these other categories that it's good to have a little bit of an extra budget for, because they'll come up more often than you're expecting. Do you want to buy a little souvenir? This doesn't have to be a huge budget, but it's nice to budget away a few dollars at least every day for when those things come up that you want to get. Moving on to our next section is entertainment, obviously. Unless you plan to live a very frugal life when you get there, it's so great to have a little bit of a budget for entertainment. Although there's free entertainment in a lot of places you can go to, some things are just going to cost money, and some experiences are just worth it. Paying to go into a national park in Costa Rica and then going on a guided kayaking tour through the mangroves. Those were two things that we really took the opportunity to dive on. Renting ATVs for a couple days to explore what Santa Teresa had to offer. There are going to be things that come up that just make sense to do while you're in there. I get you're saving money, so you set your budget where you want to, but I recommend a little bit of budget set across for entertainment for when those things come up. And then finally, that last category is going to be travel. Even if you're in one spot, are you going to need to take the bus every day, or are you going to just walk? For most people, you're going to want to have some sort of travel budget located in. Are you going to be moving to spots? Are you going to do a weekend trip? How are you going to get there? What's the transportation system like? I'll talk a little bit more about researching the place you're going, but it's important to research. Are you going to have to fly? Are there buses? Are the buses safe? What is your transportation going to be like? I'll emphasize this point a lot as this video goes on, but research is just so important to your journey when you go digital nomading, of what the place is like where you're going. As I've said, the food, the transportation, the entertainment options, how much money you'll need, how much do these things cost, and how can you adjust your budget depending on how much you have. Now, on top of those, we're going to talk about two other things. The next one is just going to be an emergency fund, because emergencies do happen. Number one, you're probably going to want to have the money to get back to your home base, wherever that is, come necessary. Whether that's buying a plane flight, whether that's maybe just a bus trip, or however, whatever you need to get back to home, would that be necessary? You do not want to get stuck in a foreign country without the money to go home. Some of you might have relatives that can help you out, but in general, I just think it's good to have an emergency fund in case you get injured, hurt, or have to go home for every reason, just to be able to do that on a whim and not having to worry about getting stuck in another place. I know, hearing Robert Greene's story, how he got stuck out in the Mediterranean on the island because he got injured and had to repay his bills there by working in construction. And that could be a worst case scenario for a lot of us. So it's important to always have an emergency fund. And then the last thing to think about is taxes, just the area you're going to, depending on how long you're staying, depending on the country that you're in, works. Where will you need to pay taxes? Do you pay taxes in the US or whatever your home country is? And do you pay any taxes to the country that you're in while you're working? So these are important things to look at. A lot of countries are very lenient on their rules for digital nomads and have came up with policies to allow people to come in and flourish like this and not pay taxes to the country they're residing in. But this is something to definitely do some research into. And the good news is there's lots of information out there, so you can figure out how it best works for you to figure out your taxes so no issues arise down the line as we're getting to there. Going back to this idea of where to go, there's so many areas of the world it can just seem daunting to choose one location. You might hear someone say, this is the ideal place, this is the ideal place. But in truth, there is no one right answer. There's going to be a fit for everyone. And then you still might choose that you don't want to stay in one place and you want to completely embrace the nomadic lifestyle and move around in your journeys. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. You will find clusters of digital nomads across the world. In Southeast Asia has taken off with digital nomads moving out there for cheap rents and cost of living, and other countries like Costa Rica have started great programs that have promoted digital nomads to come move. So there's lots of research you can do. Obviously South America has some great places, Southeast Asia has some great places, even Europe has some great places, and there wherever you are inclined to, you can probably find a good digital nomading place around the world. The things you'll probably want to look at the most is obviously going to be the stability and safety of the region you're going to. How safe is it there? How stable is the political system? You don't want to get yourself into a bad situation. So especially the first time you're digital nomading, I would recommend going to a place that has a very strong history of digital nomads coming in and out, has a very stable government, and also is a pretty safe place to be. I would completely stick with those factors for the first time you digital nomad, at least while you're starting out, while you get the hang of everything, because problems are going to come up and it's way better to solve them in a forgiving environment. The second question, as I've kind of dived into a little bit, is whether to nomad or to settle. Are you going to want to stay in one place or move around? I found that half the benefit of digital nomading is the ability to be able to move around to new places and see new experiences. But also one of the drawbacks is you become less efficient when you're spending an entire travel day, when you need work to do and you're spending so much time traveling. It can be hard to balance the two things, and you might find that you're way more efficient sticking in one place, at least for a large period of time. So that's something to keep in mind, to think about, and to see. It's possible that you choose one region to travel around and even have a home base while you're there. But these are all things to think about and consider when making your journey. The other thing to look at on top of this is going to be local laws and approval. Other areas around the world are going to have different laws about digital nomading, about what they allow. How long are you allowed to stay? Do you have to get a work visa, or do they have a program for people who work and freelance online to stay there for long periods of time? So definitely check this out. See what the options are that are available to you, and then go from there. Most countries, if you're coming from the US, as most of my audiences, if you aren't, I'm sorry to keep excluding you from the conversation, but if you're coming from the US, a lot of countries are going to allow you to at least stay for a month without having to get any sort of visa. So if you're looking to go for a couple months, then you might not need any paperwork at all. But good news, once again, a lot of this information is available depending on, obviously, the specific place that you decide to go to. Going back onto where you live, there's many options. So I mentioned the difference between short-term and long-term leases, but beyond short-term and long-term, there's lots of flexibility within there. Are you going to Airbnb? Look, if you're looking for an easy long-term lease, obviously Airbnb is available around the globe and offers you an easy way to rent an apartment without figuring out the local markets and those sort of exchanges. They provide you protection, which has ended up helping me a whole lot of times, the protection they offer. And I found the rates are pretty reasonable to the local economies that they're in. You might be paying a little bit of a premium, but if you're doing a long-term stay at Airbnb, you can get those discounts, and I find that it's actually a better deal than a lot of these other options, especially the short-term ones. You can also find the local communities, as I just mentioned, or even find a local partner who will let you stay for free in exchange for services, whether that is English lessons or whatever. Another great site is Workaway, where you can often find places to stay anywhere in the world for free by offering them some bit of your time every week to do some tasks around. It could be taking care of a garden, taking care of a farm, helping teach English. There's lots of things that are offered all around the world, and you can find a free place to stay by dedicating a little bit of your time every week. And some of them even come with free food and allowance. So it's definitely something to check out if you're worried about having the budget to find a place to stay. Then again, if you're looking for more of a short-term thing, and even some offer long-term things, I highly recommend checking out the hostels and work hostels around the world. These places not only offer great facilities for getting your work done and sleeping, but they offer a great community to meet other people, meet other digital nomads. Some of the events that were held were incredible, where you can meet other people doing the same thing that you are and start to form these great bonds that some of which I've kept with me even to today. They're a great introduction, and they help you get acclimated to a new place, so you can meet people who have already been there for a large period of time who can give you tips and tricks. And I found that even if you are planning on staying at a long-term stay like an Airbnb, it is at least worth spending a couple nights or coming to the events at the local hostel, even if you have to pay extra, to get to meet the communities. It's a great community spot to meet other people nomading, and you can definitely find people nomading in basically every country of the world, and I'm sure you can find work hostels in many, many of them. When choosing your place to stay, 2 things to keep in mind, and I know they might sound obvious. The thing is, a lot of times they can be forgotten in the moment when you're booking. Number 1 is Wi-Fi. Make sure the place you're staying at has Wi-Fi. Now, you might say there's Wi-Fi next door. Maybe you don't need it for your job, but for 99% of the people going out there, it is so much better if your place has Wi-Fi. Just being able to work from your home when it's pouring out rain outside, when you don't want to go out to a local internet cafe, having a place with Wi-Fi is such a game changer. Now, you might be thinking, oh, I'll just bring a cellular block. A lot of times that's not reliable. When I was looking for my place to stay with Airbnb, I would ask them if there was Wi-Fi, and then if there is, what the speeds were. Was it going to be a speed that works for me? Do I need to do video calling as part of my job? Do I need to connect to something that requires fast speeds? So keeping these things in mind with Wi-Fi. Number 2 is going to be air conditioning or heating. Heating and AC is a little bit more optional than Wi-Fi, but it's one of those things where you think you might not need, and then you get there, and then you do. I made the mistake of going to a place that didn't have AC, and it was so, not necessarily hot, but just so humid that it was very hard to do any work in the place, and that you would literally feel like you took a shower if you walked around for too long. So you can look at online advice about whether the place you're going to, if you need AC or heat, but if you're going to a place with a dramatic climate like that, I would recommend looking into it and looking into what people advise online. Going back onto your money, we talked a little bit about each of those things you want to budget for, but beyond budgeting, you need to make sure you have a way to pay where you're going. Obviously, this could mean having a local currency, but does your bank work for the country you're going to? Do you have a card you can use with the country you're going to? Are there ATMs where you can draw money out if you need more? A lot of times in countries, it's not a good idea to just have all the money you need for the entire time you're there in one big stack. It could be dangerous. So it's good to have an idea of how you will have access to money. That means calling your bank, if that means checking online, just making sure you have a way to access money if you need to in the place that you're going to. That's a good thing that often gets forgotten that I highly recommend you check and figure it out. Now moving on to other tips. And the other tip, number 1 I'll go into is do your research before you go. It's important to know the place you're going and know the customs, know the costs of living the place you're going, know the transportation methods, know places to stay and communities. And there's usually digital nomading communities on Facebook and other connection places online where you can connect with people already there. So you can already feel part of the community to prepare your trip. So you at least have some sorts of resources when you go of someone you can connect to if you need something. So these are things to do. Just make sure you do your research. I mentioned knowing the customs, which is, it's big. It's as a digital nomad, you have responsibility to blend in the places you're going and not disturb the residents. So learning the customs, I believe, is very important. Along with customs, I would learn a little bit of a language. If you're going to a place that doesn't speak your native language, I would make sure you at least learn the basics so you can get around if necessary. How to pay for a bus ticket, how to order food, how to say hello, how are you, what is the customary greeting. These things are just, they're good to have, and then once you know these basics, once you get there, you can plan to pick up the rest. But having a little understanding of the basics of the language wherever you go can have a long way. If you're lost and need to ask for directions, it goes a long way in helping to blend in and fit in with a new culture. Another thing, travel insurance. I found this one to be a little bit difficult to find travel insurance, so I've gone ahead and linked one below. I'm not sponsored by them at all, but I just found it very hard to find a travel insurance that worked for what I needed when I went abroad. A lot of your home insurance plans, if you have a home insurance or renter's insurance back home, will cover you when you travel. And if you want to call them or check your policy, you can check and see if this is the case if you have another residence in the States. But other than that, you might want to get travel insurance in case something gets stolen. Things get stolen and lost traveling all the time, and having some protection about that, I highly recommend. So that's definitely something to look into and a cost to add potentially to your spreadsheet. Time zones, big thing. Are you a remote worker and do you have to go into meetings? It could be your meetings are at the middle of the night. So if you're going across the world, to US to Asia, it could be that your meetings that were in the middle of the day are now in the middle of the night. So this is something you want to plan for. And maybe you're okay with doing that, but maybe you want to have second thoughts and go somewhere in a similar time zone to you so you can meet your work schedule. And even if you don't have set meetings, are you going to be able to meet your clients when you need to? If you're in a business, your employees, or whoever else you're meeting with, this is something to really, really take notice of. Another tip, travel light. Big mistake. I've made this mistake. Others have made this mistake. When I was going on a trip, I wanted to have access to a lot of things and have them with me. But once I got there, the pain of carrying around multiple suitcases everywhere I go became very drastic, especially if you're traveling between many places. I wish I just left more at home and just traveled lighter. I would have been much happier to travel light and not have a lot of things I had with me, just because it's so much easier to be able to pack everything in a small suitcase or a backpack and be able to travel light. It's easy to ride and keep track of all your stuff. I highly recommend traveling light to just avoid this pain of having so much stuff with you. Last tip I'm going to bring up is having a work-fun divide. Once you get to these places, a lot of places around the world are super fun. There's so many activities, so many people, and you can easily find yourself carried away and not getting the work done that you need to. I found myself doing this so many times, and it's important to do what you need to do to make sure that there is a clear divide between your work time and your fun time. Whether you make a schedule, whether you budget some hours away you need to get done every week, or whatever you need to do in your current situation, dividing up this time is important and making sure you don't let the fun get carried away. Digital nomading has created some of the best times in my life, but also you're still working, which hence the digital side of things, and it's important to make sure you don't lose out on opportunities because you are just enjoying yourself too much. Being the party police here, make sure you make that work divide very clear. Finally, we're on to pulling the trigger. Now, when we come down to the truth of it, so if you're in one of these positions where you're having trouble to actually deciding to pull this trigger and actually go for it, what I recommend is booking a ticket and then booking a return ticket for 30 days. So you only give yourself a month to try it out, see if you like it. Digital nomading does not have to be a permanent thing, a permanent change to your life. It could be just a period of your life that you try out, the time that you spend traveling. I think what discourages a lot of people from actually pulling the trigger is they feel it's very permanent. So the first time you go, book a return ticket in 30, 40 days. Once you do the planning, go and try it out. And if you like it, you can bring this onto your life. But I believe that's the easiest way to pull the trigger and get started, because so many people will think about it, they'll think of it as too big of a thing for them, and they just won't ever get to doing it. So if you're considering it and you've done the budgeting and you have the money to do it and you have everything set up and in place and you're still on the fence, try the 1 month trick. Pick a place, go for a month with that return ticket, and then go from there. You may even like it so much you move the return ticket, but at least you have it set in place, so you'll only be there a month. And at the very least, you'll be home in a few weeks. So that's my advice today. I know I didn't dive into any one of these things super deeply, but I meant for this to be an ultimate guide so that you can have a good overview of the whole process. And if there's any one of these things you want me to dive into further, just leave a comment below and I will leave my experience doing that. And make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'll be sharing more videos on digital nomading, how to grow your business, how to grow your side hustle, whether you're in high school, college, or whatever age you are, and how to turn that into a full-on business. So make sure to subscribe. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.